Hi guys, welcome back to this channel. So for today's tutorial, we're making this beautiful kimono jacket you're seeing right here, a sleeveless kimono jacket. If you want to see I made this, keep on watching. It's going to be a very simple tutorial. Let's jump right into it, guys. Welcome back. So this is the Ankara fabric I'll be using for this tutorial. You'll be needing your scissors, your chalk, and of course your measuring tape. So what I did here was to divide my hip measurement by 4 plus 5 inches. Then I went ahead to add an additional 4 inches for my front piece, and this is because I'll not be adding lining or anything to this jacket. So this 4 inches I folded inward is just for the turning of my jacket to make it look neat. So I added an additional 4 inches, but you can make yours 5 inches so that you could fold it very well inside. So that's why I added that 4 inches. So right now I'm going to take my length measurement, the length of the jacket. So the length of my jacket is 29.5 plus the seaming at the shoulder and the folding at the down. So I made everything 32.5 inches. So I'll mark out my 32.5 inches now. Then when I finish marking it out, I'll cut it out. So let me just go over it again. I divided my hip measurement by 4 plus 5 inches plus an additional 4 inches, which is this folded part you're seeing right here. And that's because I'll not be adding line into it. So I went ahead to mark my length, the length of the jacket. The length of my jacket is 29 plus seaming at the shoulder and folding at the down. So everything I marked out was 32.5 because I needed enough fabric to fold it at the down. So everything I marked out was 32.5. So there's the front piece. I'm going to use this front piece to cut out the back piece. So I'm just arranging it so that everything is going to fall in its right measurement. Fold my 4 inches back into place. So now this is the back piece. To cut out the back piece, for the front piece we used 32.5 inches. So we're going to add 4 inches to this back piece, making it 36.5 inches. Do you understand? Like for the front piece, we use 32.5 inches for the length. So now I'm going to add 4 inches to the back piece, making it 36.5 inches for the back piece. I'll go ahead and cut out the length of the back piece. So there's the back piece. I'm going to place the front piece on the back piece. Remember that the back piece is longer than the front piece by 4 inches. So I'll make it equal at the top part like this. Just watch what I'm doing. I'll make it equal at the top part. That's the SS at the down, the 4 inches SS for the back part. So I'll make it equal at the top part like this. So after arranging it, I'm going to come down by 1.5 of an inch to make my shoulder slant. So I'll come down by 1.5 of an inch, then connect it to the other side of the fabric. To make my shoulder slant, I'll just connect it like this. Connect it. Then when I'm done connecting it, I'm going to cut it out. So after cutting, we're going to make the front piece and the back piece equal at the bottom. So for us to do that, I'm going to drag the front piece down like this. Just drag yours down to make it equal at the bottom. Then you arrange your fabric very well. So now the next thing we're going to do is to mark out our body measurement. But before we mark out our body measurement, we're going to make sure that the front piece and the back piece is equal. So for us to do that, I'm going to carry the back piece like this and place it on top of the front piece with 1/4 of an inch, just the way you see me doing. Just carry your back piece, that's the front piece, carry your back piece and place it on the front piece like this with 1/4 of an inch. Don't cover it, just like 1/4 of an inch, just place it on top. So after placing it on top, just use your hand to like straighten it out because that's where our measurement is going to start from. So after doing that, we're going to mark out our neckline. So this is the place we're going to mark out our neckline. That's where we're marking out our neckline. So now for my neckline, I'm going to mark out 3.5 inches, 3.5 inches wide. I'll mark out my 3.5 inches just like this, the way you see me doing. Then I'll go down by 2.5 inches. When I finished cutting mine, I later increased it to 3 inches because I discovered that it was high. So when you're cutting yours, you can make yours 3 inches deep because like 2 inches was high for me. So I didn't want my neck to be round, so that's why I make it like a square like this. I just make it in a form, made it in form of a square. So I didn't want it to be round. So now I just connect it like this. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to mark out my shoulder. For my shoulder, I used 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8, plus the folding in of the shoulder, the same allowance. I marked out 9 inches. So I'll just go down by 8.5 inches for my armhole. So I'll come down by 8.5 inches and we'll mark that out also. Just connect the line to my shoulder like this. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to mark out my bust point. My bust point is 10 inches, so I'll mark out 10 inches like that. So the next one is my bust. I'll mark out my bust 14 inches.
Sorry, my under bust.
I'll mark out my
under
14
bust
inches.
is 14
then
inches.
For my half length,
to get your half length, you add 3 inches to whatever you
have as your bust, you add 3 inches to it. That's your half length. Now I'm going to mark out my hip line. My hip line is 27, so I'll mark out 27 inches. I'll mark out my 27 inches. So that other part is the length of the jacket. So that's going to be the length of the jacket. Now I'm just going to draw out my line. So go ahead and connect your lines like this. Just draw them out to make it very bold. So after that, I'm going to mark out my round body measurement. To get your round body measurement, whatever you measure as your round body measurement, your bust, your under bust, your half length, your hip, you divide it by 4. So now I'm going to divide my bust by 4. My bust divided by 4 plus 2 inches for ease since it's a jacket. So I'll divide it by 4 plus 2 inches. Then I'm going to mark it out like this. So after marking out my bust measurement, the next thing I'm going to mark out is my under bust. My round under bust is 32. 32 divided by 4 is 8 plus 2 inches for ease. So I'll mark it out. I'll mark out my 32 divided by 4 plus 2 inches for ease. So what I did here was to add 1 inch for seam allowance. So I'm going to add 1 inch again for seam allowance for the bust part. So just mark out your 1 inch for seam allowance. So the next one is my half length. Half length is 27. 27 divided by 4 plus 2 inches. We'll mark that out also. Then plus 1 inch for seam allowance. Just watch what I'm doing, you understand it. So I'll add my 1 inch for seam allowance now. So I've marked out my 1 inch for seam allowance. The next one is my hip measurement. My hip divided by 4 plus 2 inches, then plus 1 inch for seam allowance. Plus 1 inch for seam allowance. So that's it. So now, whatever I use for my hip, I'm just going to minus 1 inch from it and mark it out for my length to give it a little bit of shape. So just minus 1 inch for what I use for my hip measurement. So I'll mark it out like this. So now connect the lines so that you can see them very well. So you see, this other line is for the seam allowance, remember. So as you can see, the shape of the jacket is already coming out. So just connect it like this. So I'll just fold it like this to get my marking at the other side of the fabric as well. So that's it. So now the next thing we're going to do is to connect our armhole measurement. So just go ahead and connect your armhole measurement like this. If you have your ruler, your curve, you can use it, but just come out with ½ of an inch like this. Then connect it to the shoulder. like this. So after this now, I'm going to cut my jacket out. I'm just going to cut it out. So now I'm going to cut it out. To cut out my neckline, I'm going to pick the back piece, just one part of the back piece like this. Just watch what I'm doing. Cut just one part of the back piece like this. I'm going to follow the lines I marked out. Just follow it to get the shape of my neck. So I'll follow it and cut it out like this. Be careful not to cut the other side of the back piece. I'm sorry I'm blocking the camera, but I'm cutting out the neckline. So I'll just follow the lines that I marked out like that. So now I'm going to cut out just the front now. Cut out just the front. Just the front like this. Be careful not to cut out the back parts. So just cut out the front like this. This piece is very tricky, so just cut out the front, just the front. So you see, this is what you get. You cut out the front, then that's the only part you're cutting out from the back. Don't cut the back and the front together. Do you understand? So you don't make the mistake of spoiling the fabric. So now the next thing we're going to do is to cut out measurements. So I'll start with the armhole. So just follow the lines and cut it out. So after cutting, this is what it's going to be looking like for now. So now I'm going to take the front piece from the back piece. Remember that the front piece is going to have an opening. So I'm going to open the front piece now. So that's where the opening is going to be. So I'll just open the front piece. Just watch closely. So I'm going to open it like this. After cutting, so this is what it's going to look like. One side for the right and one side for the left. So like I said, this is what I'm going to use to turn the neck inside. So when you finish cutting, you're going to have one side for the left and one side and one piece for the right. So the next thing I'm going to do is to cut out the yoke for the back. So this is what I'm going to be using for the back piece. I'll take a fresh fabric and place the back piece like this. Is this going to serve as like the lining for turning the neck area? So just place it like this and trace it out. Trace out the neck and around the armhole a little bit. So just watch what I'm doing. It's very simple. Just trace it out like this. So after cutting, this is what you're going to have. So I'm going to place the right side of the yoke facing the wrong side of my fabric. Then I'll sew all around the neckline like this. Just sew it all the way around the neckline. So I'm going to take that to my machine. For the front piece, remember the 4 inches that we folded in. So that's what we're going to use to turn the neckline area. So when turning the neckline, just turn it to the wrong side, then sew it around then before you turn it to the right side. So I'm going to show you what it's looking like after I sewed it. So this is what it's looking like after sewing. I sewed it on the wrong side. This is the wrong side of the fabric. I sewed it on the wrong side, then I turned it over to the right side after sewing. I turned it over to the right side. So before I did that, I went ahead to cover my rough edges with like 1/4 of an inch like this. 1/4 of an inch. When you're cutting yours, you can actually make yours 5 or 6 inches instead of 4 inches that I use. As you can see that my shoulder is very small. the fabric was not enough to, like, it was very small, so you could actually make yours 5 or 6 inches to be on the safer side. But I'm going to use my hemming gum to put that in place to hold it down. So after sewing, this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to iron it and the shape is going to come out. So I'll do the same for the other side of the right piece, the front piece, sorry. So that's the back part. So for the back part, like I showed you earlier, I turned the neck around. So when I finish sewing, this is what I'm going to get. I'm going to iron it out. After sewing, I'll iron it out. So that's the front part of the fabric. That's the front part of the fabric. So that's why I said the yoke, the right side of the yoke should face the wrong side of the fabric, so that when you turn it over, it's going to look like this. The front part is going to be on top of the front part of the fabric. So guys, after sewing, I ironed it. So this is what I have. I folded it down with like 1 inch or so, or more than 1 inch, but I folded it inside. So I'm just going to take it to my machine and sew it. For my front piece, I have ironed it and I have sewn it. So as you can see, it's very neat. It's just to use my hemming gum to hold it down like so. So after doing this, I did the same thing for the other side of the front. So after this, now I'm going to attach the shoulder of the front piece to the shoulder of the back piece. So I'm going to sew it together. Now I'm going to join them together. So after joining, this is what I have, the front piece and the back piece together. So as you can see, this is the rough side. They're already looking very neat. So now I'm going to cover the rough edges at the armhole. So you can use your material, but I used my bias tape, like this one you see. So I used my bias tape to like cover it. It's looking neater than using your actual fabric. So you can use the actual fabric like that to fold it inside. So I'll do the same thing for the other side. So I went ahead to sew the sides together with our 1 inch allowance that we added earlier while cutting it. So this was looking like. So I've attached the sides, the armhole, the shoulder, and the hemming at the down. So that's the final look. Like I said earlier, it's a very simple jacket. We're not using any, we didn't, like I told you, I wasn't going to use any lining, so it came out very neat and very beautiful. So as you can see, it's neat and everything is in place. So the only thing I did off camera was to attach pockets to the jacket, so I couldn't get it on camera. What I did was I came down from the armhole by 9 inches, then I cut out 4 parts of this pocket, then attached 1 to each side of the jacket. So I just came down, sewed it to the 9 inches, then sewed it around the pocket, then all the way down. So it's very simple to make. If you want me to make a video on how I made this pocket, just let me know in the comment section. So if you find this video helpful, give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Please don't forget to subscribe and like and share. See you guys on my next one. Bye bye.